Here are 8 cool ways to get on your skateboard. So last time we talked about 8 cool ways to pick up your skateboard. So naturally, we're going to look at the other side of the coin and look at cool ways to get on your board. Up first, we have the good old-fashioned regular throwdown. This is the one you'll see pretty much 99% of people doing when they go to get on their board. It involves just holding your board in your hand, running forward, and throwing your board down while you jump on it. There's really not too much to this one, but like I mentioned in my video about things that beginners should know how to do well, this is one that you should definitely learn pretty soon after you start skating. So all you really need to do is pick up the board and hold it in your front hand. That'll be towards the nose when you start riding. And then as you start to step forward, drop the tail down first. And as the rest of the board starts to come down, simultaneously take a little hop off your back foot while putting your front foot down onto the board. Like I said, there's not really much to this one, so there's not really much that can go wrong. So just practice it slow at first, and eventually it should feel really easy and natural to do. For number 2, we have the Biebelheimer. Now this is one I covered a long time ago in my 10 easy tricks for beginners video, and I still think it's a pretty cool way to get on your board. This one is very similar to the regular throwdown, except you turn your board so it's upside down. And once you throw the board down, it should hit the ground and flip over, and then you jump on it. To do this one, set up like you're going to do the regular throwdown, except turn your board around so it's facing the other way. And this one really is basically just throwing the board down like this, but there are a few things you can do to make it easier and to make sure that it'll flip over. The first one is I like to turn the board slightly at an angle, because if you throw the board straight down, it can tend to just hit the ground and bounce a little and not actually flip over. So yeah, try turning it a little bit, but not too much, because that can cause it to do other weird things. And the next thing I like to do is to actually drag my tail on the ground as I'm walking into this one. I just find that this gives me a more consistent flip over, but keep in mind that that isn't required, and you can still do this one while holding it in the air and not letting it drag. So basically, having your board upside down, just practice stepping forward and throwing it down a few times to see if you can get it to flip. And once you feel like you've gotten it down, it's just a matter of hopping onto the board. This one can seem a little scary at first because you're not sure if you're going to get the board to flip over and you can land primo, but you just have to really pay attention to the board, and when you jump up, just kind of hover for a second instead of landing straight on your board and make sure that it flips over. For number 3, we have the caveman. For this one, you're holding the board in your backhand rather than your front, and as you run forward, you jump up into the air and throw the board under your feet. This one can also be done while holding the nose, which probably makes it a little easier, but I'm going to be focusing on the one where you hold it with your backhand on the side. So the first thing to do is basically just to practice doing cavemans while standing still. Just remember that you don't have to jump too high, you just need to jump enough to get the board under your feet. Besides that, you just want to be comfortable jumping on your board and rolling away, and then you just try and put the two together. This one can get a little weird if you try and jump too high. You may end up landing a little crooked or hitting the board with your feet. But like I said before, if you just practice jumping a little lower for the first few times, then you should be able to work your way into getting a full-size jump. This one's also a good one to know because you can do it off of objects or into other tricks. For number 4, we have the rail flip. Now this one's pretty cool, even though I'm not too good at it, but basically you have your board set up on the rail in primo position, and you kick down on the tail, causing the board to flip and rotate, and then you jump back on and land it. To start off trying this one, you just have to set up your board in that primo position. And for this one, it's a lot easier to flip if you have the graphic of your deck facing away from you rather than towards you. So after that, you just want to practice kicking down on the side of the tail. And you should be able to see that it's pretty easy to get the board to flip, but there are a few things to watch out for. The first being that when you kick down with your back foot, you're not just kicking straight down, but you're actually kind of giving it a scooping motion. And because this causes the board to rotate, you also want to watch out for your front foot so that the board doesn't hit it. So just practice standing there at first, kicking the board and seeing if you can get it to flip and rotate. And then the last part is actually jumping off your front foot and landing back on the board. And this one can be really easy to over or under rotate. So you're just going to have to mess around with how hard you kick the board a few times. And eventually you should find the sweet spot and be able to land right back on the grip tape. Up next, we have the impossible. So I showed you how to do the impossible pickup, and this one's pretty much just the other side of it. For this one, you pop down on the tail, have it do an impossible around your back foot, and then jump on. This one's pretty easy once you get it, and it can actually be a good practice step if you ever try and learn no comply impossibles. So just like with the other one, the first thing you want to practice is doing these one-footed impossibles while standing still. Make sure your back foot is in the pocket and you're not slamming down too hard so the board doesn't fly away from you. So you can practice just doing this motion and then trying to jump on the board while standing still. I like to sort of walk into this one so that when I actually do land, I start to roll away. So try it either way a few times. And remember, the hardest part of this one is keeping the board underneath you. So once you've popped the board, you may need to jump forward to stay over it. So once you've got the timing right, you should be able to walk up, pop the board, and have it flip around, and then jump onto it. For number 6, we have the kick up to jump on. This one's pretty stupid and impractical, but it's still fun to do. You start this one off like you're doing the kick up pickup, but once you pop it up and it lands on your foot, you leave it there and then push it forward and jump back on. So watch the other video and learn how to do the kick up pickup first. And then we're basically going to practice the same thing, except when the board lands on your foot, you're not going to kick your foot up. You're going to start trying to balance the board on top of your foot. And a way that you can stall it longer and help with the balance is to actually get the board to try and lay back onto your knee. This will make it so you have a little bit more time to think before you push the board forward and jump on. So if you've gotten to that step, then the next part is just to push your knee forward while slightly pulling your foot back. This will cause the board to just sort of fall forward. And then you just jump forward and land on it. Like I said, this one's kind of dumb, but it's a fun thing to practice just to see if you can do it. For number 7, we have straight to revert. For this one, the board is just laying on the ground. You run up from the side and jump onto the nose, immediately doing a revert. In one of my previous videos, I covered how to do a sex change revert, so this could be a good practice step for that. For this one, you just want to start off by coming up alongside your board and jumping onto the nose. And for me, it works best if I jump into a fakie position rather than nollie, but you can try either one. And then the main part about this one is just making sure that when you jump on, your nose doesn't go straight to the ground, but rather you want to have equal weight on both feet so that you're balanced, and then you immediately turn 180. Just like most other 180 type tricks, you want to use your shoulders to turn your body. And then as you run and jump onto the board, you want to land on the nose and turn fast enough so your board doesn't have enough time to scrape. This one's pretty easy, but it actually feels kind of cool having to jump on and immediately turn. And finally at number 8, we have straight to manual. This one's exactly what it sounds like. You carry the board in your front hand by the nose, just like a regular throwdown, except when you jump into this one, you're landing straight into a manual. This one's less about technique and more about balance, but there are a couple things you can do to help. The first being that it's easier to carry your board across your body rather than on your side. This just makes it so the board's in the right position when you go to jump on. And the other one is just making sure that you're not jumping too high into the air. The lower your board is to the ground when you go to jump on, the easier it'll be to initially get into that manual. So obviously it definitely helps if you can balance manuals first. And if you know how to ollie into manuals, that's even better. But if not, this one can actually be a good practice step to get your balance down for those. So these were just 8 ways to get on your board. Some regular, some cool, and some weird. And you're probably thinking that these are kind of dumb, but I guarantee that if you learn every one of them, then it should help you improve other more regular tricks. So go out and skate and mess around, but just remember to always have fun. As always, I'd like to thank my Patreon pledgers for consistently being so amazing. And besides that, I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.